This is the Bevo Buckets podcast on the Burn Orange Sports Network. I'm Will Iger here with Ryan Hopper and Seth Berger, and every Tuesday night and Tuesday day, we'll be on the Burn Orange Sports Network YouTube page and social media channels to talk Texas hoops and some of the other biggest storylines in college basketball. Guys, a 2-0 week in the SEC for the Texas Longhorns. You love to see it. I don't want to say we're surprised, but it is extremely important that the Horns picked up these two games, and I'm going to start right at the top of this Texas A&M game. Guys, this was a thriller. What were our thoughts?
Wow.
I
What a
mean,
game.
yeah,
I'm
you go,
crazy.
go first.
I mean, I think I'm just gonna have to address the elephant in the room. Will and I may or may not have left at halftime. And, the disgusting thing is, this happened to me before I was at a game with my family. We did this. Our team came back and won. I vowed I'd never do it again. We got emotional. Didn't like what we saw. Left at halftime. You know what? Our theory now is that they wouldn't have come back if it weren't for us leaving. Maybe we're holding them back. But yeah, so Will and I left. We're pissed off that we left, but we're glad the Horns pulled it out. What a game. Tied the school record, 22-point comeback. I believe the other one was the TCU game 2 years ago at home. What a performance from Trey Johnson. 30 bomb. 8 of 18 in the field, goes 10 of 10 at the free throw line. Clutch. Big time moment for a freshman. First 30-point freshman scorer at UT since KD. So really impressive stuff in a really important SEC game and a huge quad one win and a rivalry win. So all things to be proud of if you're Texas. Big step in the right direction. Thoughts, Ryan?
I echo a lot of that sentiment. Um, if it's confession time, I only saw about 16 to 18 minutes of the game because for some reason, well, I guess because there was Tennessee and Auburn and Houston and Kansas. So I get why the game was during the day, but 1:30 middle of a Saturday isn't usually the best time for something non-football. So I saw about half of it. Heck of a comeback. I was stream easting it at the establishment I was at when it was coming down the stretch. I said, oh, wow, they cut it to 12. They cut it to 8. Whoa, it's a 3-point game. And those you mentioned Trey Johnson. He has an ability, though we've all had issues with his shot selection. I mean, you'd be lying to say that you didn't. But he just has a unique ability to hit tough shots, and it seems magnified when it's down the stretch, which is even more important. I mean, it's kind of like it's kind of that Kobe factor where you could see him being your favorite player's favorite player, like Kobe or Melo, just a legit. I'm not saying he's gonna have the career of those guys, just a legit scorer where if Texas isn't in an offensive set, which you know they don't do much, he is a reliable scoring option in an isolation. And that's where the modern league's going. And you can see why he's going to be now, I would say, barring injury, a surefire lottery pick.
Yeah, guys, sorry to should have prefaced this for our viewers, but on Saturday, if anyone did not watch, Texas did beat the Texas A&M Aggies, the 13 ranked at the time Texas A&M Aggies, 70-69 on a game winner from Tremont Mark, a little lefty high off the glass layup there. And this Texas team, well, they were down 43 to 25 at half. They were down 22 points, which was the most they were down in this game. And as Seth said, it was the largest comeback in program history, tying a win over TCU just 2 years ago. And it was Buzz Williams' largest comeback loss in his career. And I think partially a lot of the reason why Seth and I left is A&M wasn't just beating us by 18 in that first half. They were completely dominating the Texas Longhorns. They were getting to every loose ball. They out rebounded the Horns. In fact, they had 13 second chance points just in the first half. The Longhorns zero. Although on the other side of things, one reason Seth and I probably shouldn't have left the game is because A&M was just on money from the 3-point line. They shot over 50% from three. They are around 48, 49% from the field. They were hitting everything they got up. Contested threes, layups, contested mid-range. I mean, even guys who usually don't shoot well for A&M, they were hitting. And yes, Nick Cody did give up a wide open three to a couple A&M shooters who are usually you don't see shoot those 3-point shots. But in fairness, that's the game plan. You let the other guys beat you outside of Wade Taylor and Zurich Phelps. In the first half, they did that, not just out hustling the Longhorns, but also out shooting the Longhorns, something probably Ronnie Terry and company didn't expect to see. And that's why in the second half, you saw a little bit different of a flip or flipping the switch from Texas because they finally were able to contain the Aggies on defense, which helped things on offense.
That's a good point, Will. First half, it looked like the basket was a hula hoop for Texas A&M. I mean, everything was dropping. It was, I mean, it was almost inconceivable because this Texas A&M team is a club that was near the bottom of the Power Four in 3-point shooting. You had, like you said, a lot of guys who typically aren't 3-point specialists or really guys who go and attempt a three. They were hitting. So at that point, it's like it's one of those halves where you just say, okay, they're it's going to even out. They're going to come back to earth. Like you also said, Nick Cody, you got to close out. It's SEC basketball. You got to get your hands up. You got to run them off. You can't leave them wide open at 3-point line because if you start giving a 3-point shooter or really any player at that level confidence from three, they're going to keep going. So they obviously Texas come in the second half. Texas A&M goes about 8 or 9 minutes with 5 points. They're allowing the Horns to crawl back into it, and they just credit to Rodney Terry and his staff and the team just keeping their head down and chipping away. The lead went from 18 and went up to 22 at the beginning of the second half, and then you look at the TV and it's 14 points, and then you look again and it's 8 points, and then all of a sudden Trayvon Mark has the ball down 1 point, drives in for that layup, and there's 3.5 seconds left, and Texas is winning. So really a testament to a team that just never gave up. Obviously, a really meaningful game here in this rivalry, top 15 opponent, and a huge win for the Horns, not only for the SEC standings momentum, but just for their psyche moving forward. And of course, state of Texas, big win.
I mean, absolutely. And, you know, as I recall, that is their first ranked win against a ranked opponent of the year for Texas. I could be wrong on that.
Mizzou was 22nd.
But
They
did
were,
they fall out?
no, they were ranked at the time of the win earlier in the week.
Okay, that's true. That's true. And so this makes this a huge week. I mean, you would too. I would say that, like we said, we thought there was a coaching mismatch, based on what Rodney Terry's has showed us so far and buzz. And that was apparent early. But, in Rodney Terry's defense, like y'all said, when you got a team, no matter how good they are, but especially a team that can rebound and play defense like A&M, if they're shooting the three like that, legitimately, they're a Final Four contender. And I know they're not going to make the Final Four because I know A&M is not going to be able to replicate 3, 4 of those halves in a row. But any team shooting like that with the fundamental basketball that they play and the defense can go a long way. And so Texas, they weren't fully in it, but you could say that they stayed within a certain striking distance and they responded. And Tremont Mark hit 8 in the second half, including that runner to win it. And I think that's also a testament to Trey Johnson taking away defensive attention on that possession. But now you guys talked about momentum, and I was talking about this on the TSTV show I was just doing. I asked our men's basketball analyst, is this going to be a springboard for success for the Horns going forward? And you look at this schedule coming up, you have a crazy Chris Beard revenge game in Oxford. That's going to be a spectacle Wednesday night. Then right after the Lady Longhorns barely escaped Oxford with a win. Then you have LSU, I believe. That should be a win. If the Horns can start some momentum and get this snowball rolling down the hill, who knows what will happen? Also, with that collapse, I can guarantee you one thing. Today must have been hell for those Aggies in practice. I mean, he must have ran them ragged. And watch out, their schedule lightens up as well. They have Oklahoma and South Carolina. Whatever the spread is, I'm telling you, Texas A&M, they will spank both of those teams after the week of practice they're about to have after that collapse. I'm telling y'all.
Yeah, I mean, I also want to point out that yes, you say the Texas A&M. I also hope for, I mean, I think Buzz Williams probably also at the very end should have them line up at the free throw line and shoot free throws until they make 20 in a row because that was a huge spot for the Horns to come back. A&M kept missing the front end of the 1-and-1, which kept the door open for the inevitable Horns comeback. So A&M, like you said, I agree. I think it's kind of the team in a nutshell. If you look at their last week, the comeback against Ole Miss, I believe their odds at one point at that game were like 2.5% chance of winning. And then on the flip side, against Texas, they were up to like a 97.5% chance of winning. So literally, I think it's kind of the even Steven, all everything evens out theory of sports. So really interesting week if you're an A&M fan. I'm sure you would have rather swept Texas if you had to choose out of the two games, but that was a huge win for them in Oxford. Um, and then moving forward for Texas, I want to spotlight Tremont Mark. It's out of all the transfers, he had a lot of fanfare coming in. I know he started the year hurt, took him a little bit to obviously the whole team was pretty new, so a lot of gelling overall, but specifically for Tremont coming off the injury, it seems like he's starting to get things going, especially on the offensive end. He's been shooting a little bit better. And I'm really excited for him because I know obviously that's a huge shot for him, and hopefully he stays confident and assertive moving forward because he's a really important component to this Texas team. Especially, we don't know the timetable yet on Kendall Weaver and Arthur Kaluma's injuries. So much depth as you can get in this conference, it's going to be vital. And hopefully, moving forward, he can be a key cog in this Longhorn basketball team.
Yeah, a lot there to recap. First, getting Texas A&M Aggies out of the way. Hop, you're completely right. This A&M team can make a run in the NCAA in March Madness. Sorry, excuse me, because yes, they do defend. They will out hustle you, and they maybe will out coach you with Buzz Williams. But also, they have great guard play led by Wade Taylor and Zurich Phillips. And you look at other teams who've won the NCAA championship the last couple of years. I mean, UConn, obviously, Tristan Newton, Cam Spencer. You look at that Kansas team that won 3 years ago. They had Remy Martin and Ochai Agbaji running the show. And even Baylor 4 years ago, I mean, they had a load of guards. They had Davian Mitchell, Jared Butler, a young Flagler, a young Cryer. So just a couple things there to look out for if you are Texas, might see an A&M in the SC championship or even March Madness in the future. On the Texas side of things, yes, Trey Johnson obviously stole the show, but I also look at the other guys who really stepped up in the absence of Kendall Weaver and Arthur Kaluma. One guy, Caden Shedrick, who we've been tough on all year, he's 9 and 8 and 2 blocks. And down the stretch,
And he hit a
yes,
three. All these
and he
points
hit it
coming
first,
in
right.
for
He
hitting
did
threes.
he did hit a three.
I couldn't believe my eyes, Will.
And me and Seth Berger might have shared a little laugh when he hit the three because we were still there in the stands. And then the unsung hero of this Texas basketball team, who played great against Missouri in a win on Wednesday or Tuesday night or last Tuesday, and he played great against A&M again, although it may not show up in the stat sheet, is Julian Larry. He had 6 assists, was the most any Longhorn player had this year against a Power 5 opponent. Larry's had 13 assists against, I believe, Arkansas Pine Bluff earlier in the year. Obviously, different competition. But Larry pushes the pace. He plays good defense. In a game like this where Jordan Pope can't get his shot going, it's vital to have another guard come in and set the tone. And Larry did that. And obviously, shout out Tremont Mark with the game winner. I believe he put up 11 or 12 points. But he stepped up as well down the stretch, something that, Longhorn Nation kind of expect to see from him from the start of the year, but looks like he's kind of coming into place as the season goes on. You guys have anything else on this A&M game, or should we move on to Missouri? A little Missouri recap.
Yeah, I think we put this one to bed. Overall, just a great win for the Horns. I think that fired up the fan base, and I think, as Hop said earlier, in this little stretch coming up, it's nice to be sitting there at 3-4 in the conference instead of 2-5 because now the next four games you have a chance to go win two or three of these, maybe even four if you play great basketball. I think three is attainable. It's going to be difficult, but it's attainable. So this is a huge stretch coming up for Texas.
Well, and absolutely. And I would say I noticed him a little bit in the A&M game, but like just being at the Mizzou game and seeing what he does, I do have an appreciation considering, with the Weaver injury, they need another perimeter stopper. I think Devon Pryor is pretty fast laterally, and I think he can stay with some of these guards, and he's 6'7", so you could flex him onto like a wing or a forward. Well, not a power forward, but you could flex him onto a wing, and he could switch on defense as well. He's very switchable. He's very athletic. He needs to get a little bigger, and that's an offseason project, but I think Devon Pryor, Texas fans may not know him, the sophomore. Um, I think that he could play in a crucial, crucial role when you're down now going forward. We don't know how long your main stretch four and your second leading scorer and your best perimeter defender. So, and I first noticed him in that Mizzou win, leading us into that.
Yeah, I like that prior take a lot, Ryan. I wish I saw honestly a little bit more confidence from on the offensive end because you saw like that pull up he had against A&M. It looked pretty good. It looked pretty smooth. If he just be a little bit more confident on the offensive end, I think things will click for him, especially since, as you said, Hop, he can provide a lot of challenges for opposing teams' guards, maybe even a Sean Padula against Ole Miss on Wednesday night if they throw him out there, just to change things up a little bit from a Larry, a Mark, or a Johnson. That being said, I think Texas should be a little bit more confident about making this March Madness tournament, considering just it seems like every team in the SEC is kind of beating up on one another. Obviously, we saw Kentucky got upset by Vanderbilt. Ole Miss dropped two games last week, one of them being to Missouri, who Texas beat. And it seems like the conference is becoming eerily similar to what we saw from the SEC football this year. But moving on, Texas last Tuesday. It was a snow day in Austin. Surprisingly, a packed house in the corral. I was unable to make it to the corral, but found myself up in the standing room only tickets. And Texas defeated the Missouri Tigers 61 to 53. It was low scoring from start to finish, but Texas pulled away and pulled away late, taking the lead with a little under 4 minutes left. And our man, the big man himself, Caden Shedrick, he had the layup to put the Horns up three. I mean, put the Horns up one with 3:43 left, and it was something we haven't really seen a lot from the Longhorns. A good set right out of the offense. Kaluma a little pin down screen. Chedrick comes up the curl. He's right there, wide open for the layup, and it was great to see. Great execution by the Horns, Kaluma and Shedrick overall, guys. Everyone's talking about this A&M win. The second most important victory of the year was this win against Missouri. What did you guys see from the Horns' action against the Tigers last Tuesday in a snow day?
Great win. Obviously, these are biggest week of the year for Texas here with two ranked wins. Missouri is a good team. Missouri just went to Florida earlier this year, smoked them, and they beat Kansas at home. They won Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's a ranked team now. They beat them, and they've just beat Ole Miss coming off the Texas game. So Missouri is a very legitimate basketball team. That's probably going to end up being a quad one win for Texas, which is just another huge thing for them moving forward. As you mentioned, the tournament resume, and then the SEC. Archie Miller was shocked to learn that the SEC was 500 in conference play, which is a funny clip. If you haven't seen that today, he thinks there's a little bit of SEC bias going on, which is one of the funnier things I've seen. But not to get uh,
There's a lot of people lacking brain cells in those replies.
he
Oh
must he
man.
must he must be a little fried from practice the last few games because I mean that was one of the funnier interview gaffes I've heard from not just a coach but in general. But not to get too far off topic,
Oh,
this game was a total rock fight, this Missouri game. But weirdly enough, when I was at this game, it was Missouri had a slim lead for a while at the end of the first half and into in the early part of the second half, and something about it that I don't know what it was. I just always had this gut feeling like Texas was going to pull it out, maybe just being at home, maybe because they were in a spot where they really just needed a win, especially against a quality opponent. But a total rock fight. I mean, we talk about Trey having a great game against A&M. He did not play well offensively against Missouri. He was 3 of 15 from the field, which is rare for a three-level scorer like Trey. And Kaluma is the leading scorer of the game, plays 32 minutes, but leaves during crucial time. I saw it was down at the under four, and he was riding the bike in the tunnel. So that was the impetus of the injury there, it seemed like. But a total rock fight. Missouri's leading scorer was Tamar Bates with 10 points. And, that's when your leading scorer is 10 points, you're just in for a defensive slugfest. And, props to him. He threw down one of the better dunks I've seen. Just a total posterizer on Caden Shedrick. Um, but the Horns dug it out. They won. You know, they I mean, when you shoot 20% from three and 34% from the field, you beat a top 25 team. You'll take that all day because that's a testament to your defense.
I mean, absolutely, I agree. But the context is Mizzou shot 31.5% from the field
Right.
and shot 18% from three. I mean, I'm usually not this. I mean, I can be snarky in my personal life, but I'm usually not snarky on my online presence. But I'm sitting there with my buddies in the corral, and I put on my Twitter at Ryan underscore Hopper 31. Both teams shooting the lights out so far. And it was like a JV high school game. It was 6-4 after like 7 minutes. I was like, I was like, guys, yeah, it was like 6-4 because I think it was 6-6 and a basket was disallowed. It was crazy. Look, those are the types of games and we all said in last week we see a close win against Mizzou, and then we all picked against Texas for the A&M game, understandably. But I kind of agree. I felt like okay, this is an RT. Our guys are going to go out there and strap people up kind of game, and so if Texas can get some of these teams sleepwalking into Austin, I know you don't think of Mizzou as a super talented team and that much more talented than Texas, but if they can get some of the elite of this conference to have a start like that and kind of bring them in like a boa constrictor in a game, like kind of like Georgia football does, I think that is kind of Texas's path when they might be outmanned. They might not, against pretty much any team they have left on the schedule, be able to defensively rebound. By the way, you'll take an A&M victory when you were out rebounded by 16. Just putting that out there. And the Aggies shot 50% from three, even though they started missing in that second half. So sometimes they say it's better to be lucky than good. Texas got some luck this week, and hopefully that could continue moving forward. As I think Oxford's going to be rocking on Wednesday night.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough. It's Chris Beard doing Chris Beard things has the program turned around in year two. They're a top 15, 20 program right or team right now, and they're coming off three straight losses, which is uncharacteristic of Chris Beard teams. And there's a lot of swirling backstory here. Obviously his players weren't with him at Texas, the ones at Ole Miss, but they know that this means a lot to him. And at the same time, I think Texas knows that this means a lot to them, not just to go get a ranked SEC road win, but because of who's there and everything that's gone on. So, and they have momentum, and Ole Miss is coming off of a skid. So when that happens, sometimes you get your A-level performance if you're on the skid, and sometimes if you're Texas, you can't let up. You had a nice quality win over Mizzou, and you had a huge comeback emotional win over A&M. You got to flip the page and be ready to go because Ole Miss will, I promise.
Yeah, this week for Texas might be kind of the change they needed in the season. We talked about those two wins against A&M and Missouri, two wins that probably at the start of the year we didn't think Texas was capable of winning. And now they're going into Oxford, Seth, as you said, in against playing against another team and another coach who normally you wouldn't think the Longhorns would have beat if you didn't see what they did last week to Buzz Williams to get Dennis Gates teams. And this Ole Miss team, well, four of their five starters are transfers. Their fifth, Matthew Morrell, he's a fifth-year senior. He's been at Ole Miss from the jump. And they're led by Sean Padula, the Virginia Tech transfer, Morrell, and they have a great backcourt that can put up points. And on top of that, they're full of athletes. They defend. They do everything that you would expect a Chris Beard basketball team to do. And Hop, this game matters for Chris Beard. It also matters for Rodney Terry, especially for him and the whole pro for the future of the program.
Well, because he wants to show, CDC and this Texas administration that they made the right move. They chose the right assistant off Chris Beard's staff when, the incident happened and Chris Beard was placed on leave and then ultimately fired. He wants to prove that he can get one on over his old boss. It's like in football when a developing coach gets a job and then faces the original coach as a part of the coaching tree, and you see who can win, mentor or mentee. And I think Terry, learned a lot from Chris Beard in his time here in Austin. And Terry's learned a lot in general. It didn't work out at UTEP. He was an assistant in a lot of different places. He's been around the block, and so is Chris Beard. I think each team is going to be prepared. I think this Texas team, if they weren't, already bought in, I think they're going to be even more tightly knit and bought in now. It's amazing what a 2-win week can do for a team at any level. Um, Practice is more fun. And there's just a better vibe about the place. We hope that it doesn't turn into complacency, but I actually think that the Longhorns have a legit chance in Oxford. You look at the game preview, ESPN analytics, um, had it, I just had it up here, had about a 37.5% chance for Texas. I would say that's about right. Critical factor, you mentioned the guards. Padula is a very good player. He's also gets you into your offense. He's not just about scoring the basketball. Two other very capable guards. But critically for this Texas team, you know what the Rebels don't have? Anyone listed over 6'9". Not one guy in the regular rotation is listed over 6'9". Do the box out drill this week in practice. Put the basketball on the floor in the middle of the paint. Have extra people dive in there so there's extra people for the defensive players to box out. Get physical. If Texas comes in there ready for a rock fight and they can get some of their scores going, maybe Kaluma will be back. Kaluma was a game time decision for A&M anyway, so maybe with a few more days he can get back. I think Texas could pull off an upset here. I mean, if Ole Miss can't hurt them on the offensive boards that badly and limit the second chance opportunities, Horns got a chance.
And what they lack in height, and Will alluded to this, extremely experienced team. You look at the D1 average age, Ole Miss is almost double that. They're old as dirt, and they are a absolutely phenomenal defensive unit. That's a top 10 defensive unit. Offensively, they don't turn it over. Defensively, they get in your face and they turn you over. So Texas, and we talked about them coming off the 3-game skid. This is a game you got to be ready before tip off because Ole Miss is going to come out swinging. And Texas has to do the same as well. You got to show that A&M second half wasn't a fluke. That's what that team's capable of. Hopefully you get Kaluma back. We don't know when Kendall Weaver's coming back. But this is life in the SEC. You're going on the road. It's a top 20 matchup or a top 20 road game for Texas. And I'm excited. I'm really excited to see how Texas looks coming up because I think this is a huge litmus test for this Texas team. You're in the thick of conference play. and you've won three of your last four, and you're coming off of two big wins. Show me what you got. Gut check time.
Yeah, and this Ole Miss team or Texas team may not have any bodies down low, but it's not like A&M had anyone over 6'9", 6'10" range as well. I mean, Solomon Washington and Henry Coleman, they're great on the glass, but they aren't the biggest players that Texas has faced. Similar to this Ole Miss team. They're small, but they're mighty, and they play hard like all Chris Beard teams do. You guys have any predictions for this Ole Miss Texas game?
Well, first of all, I'd just like to say shout out to my high school teammate Scoop, who printed out these shirts. He's a little guy, 5'5", and he printed out these shirts that said heart over height. So you just made me think of that. And he'd give it out to all the like shorter in stature athletes at school. Anyway, I'm gonna say that Texas does pull off the upset because the rebounding battle is relatively even. Trey Johnson hits some shots. Kaluma does play, so he's going to help you with some scoring. I'm not reporting that. I'm guessing that. I think he does play. He might not be 100%. Get some boards, get some points. Another solid game from Mark. I think Pope can get back on track. But low scoring because each team's calling card in this game is going to be defense. Uh, 66-63, Texas statement victory. Chris Del Conte is jumping around his office, relieved that he might not have made a mistake with the whole Beard thing. Also, would like to point out that while A&M isn't exactly big, they just know how to hit the glass. In their comeback win over Ole Miss last week, they couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. They shot 28% from three, 39% from the field, but they had 48 rebounds to Ole Miss's 31. I think Texas can close that gap and steal one in Oxford.
I think any coach in any sport will tell you it's tough to coach against your mentor or tough to coach against one of your former apprentices here. You know each other's tricks, you know what your go-to play, you have very similar systems usually. I think this will be a good game, and it would be huge for Texas to pull it out, but I'm gonna go Ole Miss 71-66. I think life on the in the SEC on the road is tough, and Ole Miss is coming off three straight losses. I can't see a Chris Beard coach team losing four in a row, especially two of them being at home. So I think Ole Miss escapes 71-66, and it should be a great game Wednesday night.
Yeah, guys, I'm not sure if this will happen, but I think I'm gonna go with the Longhorns in this one, 83-75. I'm drinking the Rodney Terry and Trey Johnson Kool-Aid. I think that this Texas team really has turned the season around. Looking at this Ole Miss team, they're heading in the opposite direction. And I think Texas, they can make some shots, they can create turnovers and score off them. I think they'll be able to win this game in Oxford against Ole Miss for their third straight ranked win. Moving on. Texas also has another road SEC game next week as they face the LSU Tigers, who have the second worst record in the conference, and second worst overall record in the conference at 12-7. This LSU team, guys, they are losers of 5 out of their last 6. And if Texas can get the job done against Ole Miss, they're feeling great about themselves heading into their matchup in Baton Rouge on Saturday. Making it quick here with my prediction. I'm going Texas 80, LSU 71.
Well, I think that Texas, this is a litmus test for Texas, not in winning the game. Can they put a team away and keep them at arm's length and not make this a closer game than it needs to be? There's not going to be, it's the weekend, but I'm sure there's not going to be a huge atmosphere for at that point because they play Auburn midweek this week. We can safely assume an LSU team that's 1-6 in conference play. I don't think there'll be a big showing. Maybe some of the Burn Orange faithful make the trip. Um, I think that this is a game where Trey Johnson could really get going. LSU is nobody really to stop him, and it's worth noting in their 5 conference losses, all have been by double digits. They were able to beat Arkansas, who has really struggled early on. Couldn't happen to a nicer coach, to Coach Cal. Anyway, I'll say Texas 78, LSU 66. Pretty comfortable win for the Horns, all things considered.
LSU turns the ball over a lot. They're not a good 3-point shooting team, and they do a poor job of defending offensive rebounding. But like I said, I'll keep saying it till I'm blue in the face. Life on the road in the SEC is very difficult. LSU is a mediocre ball club, but you better believe, like you said, they're probably going to be looking at 1-6 in the SEC. They're going to be hungry. It's Texas. I don't care. It's Texas basketball, Texas football, Texas anything. It's Texas coming in. You're going to get up for the game. But I do think this is a big step for Texas. You called it a litmus test. I agree. I think Texas narrowly escapes Baton Rouge with a 76-72 victory. And I think that is a huge win for the Horns. Go on the road, another second SEC road win, first against one of the charter SEC members. And I think that they split this week, and then they have, obviously, we'll get into it next week, but they have 2 more winnable games coming up after that before a stretch of some of the big dogs.
Yeah, Seth, I will say I'm a little bit more confident about this Texas team against LSU if they were to lose to Ole Miss and beat Ole Miss. If not, I would feel like it's a little bit of a trap game heading into Baton Rouge on a Saturday after three straight ranked wins. But I don't think that LSU home court environment is better at all than their women's team with Kim Mulkey, Flu J. Johnson and company. I'd be a little bit more scared if I was the Lady Horns heading into Baton Rouge than the male basketball Texas Longhorns heading into LSU. That game is on Saturday on SC Network at 5 p.m. Texas will face Ole Miss and their former head coach Chris Beard on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. on ESPN2. Seth, Ryan, I think we're going to call it a night here on the Burnt Orange Sports Network. But thank you guys so much for joining us. Please follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Burnt Orange SN and follow Ryan_Hopper31, Will_Iger, and Seth Berger all on Twitter. And please subscribe to our YouTube page, the Burnt Orange Sports Network. Thank you guys all for joining and tune in this week as Texas faces Ole Miss and LSU on ESPN2 and the SEC Network. And tune in to all our Burnt Orange Sports Network podcasts throughout the week. Thank you guys so much for joining us and have a good one.